Everything said on the Couplings Fire podcast are our opinions, and in no way represent the opinions and values of any agency we are associated with.
Hey, this is the Couplings Fire podcast.
Here's a couple of things you might need to know, or maybe you just forgot.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Taylor.
We're married.
And we're both firefighters.
Join us as we talk anything and everything fire related.
Based out of small town, rural Nebraska, we bring our unique challenges and solutions to the table every episode.
Our goal? To better the rural volunteer firefighting community, one person at a time.
Let's get on to the episode. Hey everybody! Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast.
Of the Couplings podcast.
The Couplings Fire podcast. A firefighter podcast.
A firefighter podcast.
Kind of all of it, all in one.
Yep. Sorry, I'm still trying to think of something exciting
to start out with?
Weather, yeah.
We had a little grass fire. Nothing. It was really funny though. So I was explaining to one of my friends. She doesn't know anything about firefighting, and I was explaining to her, that we went to this fire, and I was like getting excited because like when they paged us out, it was threatening a home. I was like, oh dang, this is gonna be fun, right? And we get there, and it's like nothing. It's like an acre, maybe two of a fire, and it's not even like they got it knocked down like crazy, and it got up close to the home, but they got knocked down good enough. It was fine. I'm telling that to her, and she's like, an acre or two of fire? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's a lot. I'm like, no, it's not. Well, I didn't realize in her brain, she doesn't know anything about fire. She thought the entire 1 or 2 acres was all on fire all at once. It was one big fireball just like from 1 or 2 acres at the same time.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fire.
Right? So, like, I had to explain to her, like, how it actually works. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
So, I think we've talked about this before, but we should really, like, interview or, like, get someone on here who doesn't know anything about the fire service at all. Like, just almost someone random and just, like, pick their brain and see what they think about things.
Yes, we've talked about this separately. We haven't talked about with them yet.
Well, I'm just saying we should do it. It'd be fun.
Get someone or a couple or somebody on here who has now I've talked to her too much and explained too much. She knows too much, so she can't come on.
She knows too much. We must kill her.
Yeah, she knows too much. We can't have her on now. And I think I told her that too. But I really want to get somebody or a couple or whatever on here for it because I think it'd be really interesting to see the common person's perspective.
Right. Well, and even, like, we went to Lincoln this last weekend, and we talked to a couple up there that, like...
They had no idea.
They had no idea, but, like, I'm not used to it, but, like, he didn't have, like, the hands-on mechanical mind kind of
he was an office job kind of guy.
Yeah.
He didn't have any background of working on his own stuff, so
which is absolutely fine, but it made for a hilarious conversation when it came to like fire department stuff.
Oh yeah, because because we were talking about something with just a home project about replacing outlets or whatever, and or like putting an outlet somewhere. He's like, oh yeah, you just use a normal outlet from the wall, and he's just like, wait, and he was joking, of course, but like he's like, wait, walls don't come with outlets like already in them. That's just the way they're built, right? Like that's just the way they are. It was hilarious. He's like, I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, he's just, for lack of better words, he's a very white-collar person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just makes for some pretty funny conversations when you get talking to people like that. Just really don't have an idea about that, how things work and what things mean and stuff like that. It's pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, and then Chris and I are so into the fire side of stuff, so yeah, we're talking with him, and he's just like, what?
Yeah, that was super funny.
We didn't get to go too far into anything, so they could be good candidates, or find some other people, I don't know, but... I don't know. Yeah, that'd be a blast.
It would be. That'd be super fun.
We could actually, it would be, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone else doing that, though. But it would be such a good way to see what the public actually thinks.
Yeah. If nothing else, it'd be a funny episode.
Oh, yeah.
Not trying to make fun of anyone or anything, it's just...
It's funny, yeah.
It does kind of tie in there, because, like, what the public perceives about the fire department and what the fire department perceives about their own fire department is two different things.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of funny sometimes, so... Anyway,
Anyway.
Off that subject, what do you have on the list for us to cover tonight, hon?
So for tonight, this has been kind of in my brain for a while now, and I've gathered all these little notes together, and I want to talk about how to make training more realistic on a budget. So we don't have a big budget here in our town for our fire department, and a lot of volunteer departments are kind of facing the same thing. And we've kind of gathered different notes from what we've done ourselves or learned at other outside trainings or saw on YouTube, or we gathered a bunch of different little things that we like to make training more realistic. So this is going to be a little different than our other episodes, and it's just going to be a hodgepodge of all these little bullet points of things you can consider to do. So it's probably going to be very sporadic.
But hopefully it'll still make for a good episode.
Yes. And if we think of any more off the top of our heads while we're talking, we will mention them. And this opens it up for maybe a year or two from now, we'll do a part 2 of take 2 on our new ways to do it.
Maybe.
Or something.
You never know. It's hard to say what you'll learn in a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot in 2 years being here, in the last 2 years of being here. Alrighty, so the first bullet point, what do you got on there?
So the first one I have fence posts in 5-gallon buckets. So this was a couple years ago when I went to Les Luker Conference for the first time in Kearney. I was taught by David Mellon of Valor Fire Training. And part of what we did that weekend, they were trying to make some props to make it more realistic, right? And Kearney has this amazing training center where they actually have a nice tower and everything to train and whatnot. And they have it set up with a bunch of realistic looking things, and they actually have fake power poles and everything up there to
Well, they're real power poles, but they're not live.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. They're not just imaginary. They're not paper cutouts. And so they have a lot of these real things, but they wanted to incorporate a fence for this practice. So how are they going to do this? They actually went out to one of the home stores that weekend while we were out there or something like that, and they actually got 2 5-gallon buckets. They put a fence post in each one, and they filled it partway up with cement so the fence post would stay. And they actually ended up putting a gate on it. So they could set up that gate wherever they wanted to, and the firefighters had to treat it like an actual fence and gate. And it was nice because it was sturdy because it was still in that cement. And so they had to deal with that extra obstacle there. So it's just a way for you to, how many of our houses have gates? Plenty, or
Gates,
have
fences, anything of that sort.
So it was just a nice, easy way, cheap way, and they still have these buckets out there. This last training I went to, they had those same buckets with those fence posts still out there to use. So they last a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff to make training more realistic, I mean, it's all for your department's benefit, because it's little simple things like that. How many houses do you think of that have a fence around the whole property because they have a dog? Mm-hmm. You just don't think about that.
Well, we don't have it around the front, but all the back still.
Right, you just don't think about that stuff until you hit it, and you're like, oh, what do we do now? Especially if it's a tall fence or a privacy fence or something like that. What if there's a dog on the other side? Mm-hmm. These are all to benefit you guys and to make your trainings more interactive and really get guys thinking.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for sure that one. And I had never heard about that one until you brought it home that weekend. And at first it was like, okay, that makes sense, but really nothing revolutionary. But, most of these ideas aren't anything revolutionary. Yeah. It's just things that you don't think about because we always do training the same way and stuff, So, yeah, none of these ideas are, revolutionary by any means, but they definitely get the point across that there's always something different that you're going to encounter, and sometimes even those calls you go to all the time, you don't train on them because you think simply, Yeah. I think that one kind of covers that one, yeah. The fence, if you run into that, that's definitely something extra you're going to have to encounter, and by putting this up in front of whatever building or structure you might be using to practice your interior attacks or just to size up or something like that, it'd be a good thing you can just put there and then take back with you when you're done. So nothing permanent and very portable. So.
Yeah. So the next one we got?
Yeah, so the next one we have on here is a space heater. and that would be for like interior attack, or
Yes.
not even. Well, yeah, that too. But if you're doing search, if you're using like the tick, going through a tick class, thermal imaging camera, if you're learning that for the first time, or even just getting used to using it, space heater is great. Interior attack. You can't use it with water, obviously. That'd be very dangerous. But you can definitely, like, simulating a heat source.
Yes.
For sure.
That was what I had in mind when I put this on the list, was just simulating a heat source for either fire attack or search for it. Because at least you get the heat off of it. It helps people understand or remember the fact that when they turn their body a certain way, granted, it's not as much of a reach as an actual fire is going to be.
It's not intense.
Yeah, it's not intense or anything, but you're still going to be able to feel the heat off of it. If you turn your head away, you're going to be able to feel the heats on your left side and not your right, and kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, it's just a little extra added realism there. Not too much, but a little bit. Why not? You know.
Yeah. Well, and like I was saying with the tick, I mean, if you're going through a tick class, or if you're learning to use a tick for the first time, even if you're experienced with a tick but you've never been in a house fire with it, like we have a basement here, we can kind of set up with some fake walls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can put that heater behind a closed door.
And that door will read hotter.
Yeah, that door will read hotter. Or just being out in the open, maybe behind another like half wall or something like that. With that tick, you'll actually be able to see that heat radiating up, and you'll learn a lot on how to use that tick and what you're looking for when it comes to heat and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of different uses out there for a space heater for sure. But again, it's just to make that a little more realistic, so when guys are going into a fire, that it clicks with them.
Yeah.
Oh, the heat's on my right side, or I can feel it on my left side, or I can kind of hear it over here. You know, and then the heater, the space heater, you really can't hear it like a fire you would, but
oh, well, you can if they're an old one. If they're like, "Rrrr." We have an old one at home.
sounds like a gremlin. But it's just one more factor that you can put in their brain that they'll recognize, and whether you're, like I said, whether you're doing it with a tick or interior attack, if you're doing a search, you know, that's your fire room, and if you put it behind a closed door anyway, you can say that's your fire room, and that's going to be hot. So if you're doing a search with a tick, most of the time you're not going to search a fire room itself because that's not livable conditions. But any other room around there, you can still search. You know, it's just another thing you can put in people's heads. So
Yeah.
Next up on the bullet points of training, noise tracks. This was your idea. I'll let you take it.
This was my idea. I don't know if I heard this from several places or I just came up with some of it. I don't know, honestly, where this came from exactly. I bet it has a lot of different influence. But this is noise tracks of the fire, noise tracks of a victim, noise tracks of sirens outside from the trucks, equipment sounds, of smoke detectors inside, anything you can think of that you're going to find on a fire ground.
So I'm going to stop you here. Noise tracks, meaning like
playing a
sound
CD.
effects.
Sound effects, basically.
Sound
yeah.
effects.
So, like, if you're going to have... So, yeah, you can play either a CD or something on a phone or whatever, if you have a big boombox or whatever. The most important thing to remember here is that you want your noise tracks coming from where they would on the scene. So, if you're running a training and you want equipment sounds of stuff happening outside, you're going to put that near where their entrance is, for wherever they're entering at. If you're going to have the fire sound, you want it where your fire is. If you have smoke detectors, you're going to want it up high. You know, if you have a victim, you're going to want it to be where your victim's going to be. So, kind of all that together, you got to make sure you're putting it in the right spot. That helps them when they get on a fire scene, they're used to having those sounds and where they are. They're not new sounds to them by any means. And
Right.
a lot of times we should be practicing with smoke detectors at a minimum for a smoke detector sound, because we hope everyone is running with, good smoke alarms in their house.
Right. And yeah, that's one thing through my experience on this department, going into house fires and stuff like that. Like, you really don't realize how loud they are until you get back out of the house. It's kind of
For the smoke detectors? Or for the sounds in general?
The smoke detectors, like, they're annoying
Dissectors?
as crap. Yeah, smoke detectors. They're annoying as crap. But, like, all your other, like, normal sounds that come with a fire, like, you don't realize how loud they are and how much you're hearing them until you get back out of the house. It's really weird. Like, that's mine. Like, my brain, I don't know if it's partially, and this might be a bad thing, but partially, like, the tunnel vision kind of deal.
I think a lot of it is because a lot of people do talk about that. They do talk about how they don't remember sounds happening or whatever when they're on a call. And that's just, just kind of that with the tunnel vision and where your heart rate is, you will lose some of those senses.
Yeah.
And so people don't remember that. So this is another reason good to train you on them beforehand so that you remember to listen for those sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
because that can help show you your way out.
Yeah, if you have like the fire sound effect, like easy one to go to is like
fireplace crackling.
Yeah, the fireplace crackling on
it's
YouTube.
on Netflix and YouTube, wherever you want to go find it.
That sound, although I can't tell you specifically that I've been in a fire and heard that, but
it's there.
I know it's there, and if you're looking for a hidden fire.
Secluded? Is that
secluded, hidden?
Whatever. I'd say hidden fire.
Yeah. One that you're having a hard time finding.
Just stop. Don't breathe. Hold your breath with your partner at the same time. Listen for that sound for 5 seconds.
Exactly. And I don't have a story, but I remember our chief having a story. They had a fire that was extremely hard to find. And that's how they ended up finding it. They said they actually looked for the fire for probably 30 minutes before they actually ended up finding it. The house was full of smoke, but they couldn't find a fire. And they didn't have a tick or anything like that to help them out. And that's what they ended up walking past. I think they were going up a stairway, if I remember right. And one of them caught it at their ear, and they just stopped there, held their breath, and then they could hear that crackle.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing is to practice telling your partner to hold your breath for 5 seconds to listen, because you can hear a victim, you can hear the fire, you can hear just anything you need to hear, but you have to make sure that you're not breathing at the same time, and that both people understand that immediately. Otherwise, it's going to take a while to stop and do that. But that is.
So these soundtracks, I mean, and other than that, like your truck's running outside, maybe that's going to make communication tougher, having that extra noise. Practicing with those smoke detectors, like I said.
That's annoying as crap.
They're really annoying, and they're going to frustrate a lot of people. But that's also one of those deals that the more you get people
used to it,
out of the comfort zone,
yeah,
the more you can really reinforce that training. And it's just like kind of with the SCBA packs. Mm-hmm. When we were doing drills one night and...
We were doing the Legos. No, we didn't do the Legos. We didn't. That's right.
No, it was a different night. But we were teaching some new guys to put on packs, and even the older guys that were way more experienced putting on packs. And we did it probably 4 or 5 times, and everyone was getting tired. So basically, I told them to turn on their pass alarm, and nobody could turn it off until they were done. And it annoyed a lot of people, and surprisingly enough, everyone still did a really good job with it. Mm-hmm. But that is definitely known. If you have an annoying sound or repetitive sound, something like that, it's known to screw some people up. Yeah. So yeah, smoke detectors are a great thing to put in there, and we, like you said, we should be in a lot of houses that have them. But should be.
If nothing else, even if you don't end up going in houses with working smoke detectors, if you're practicing with it, it's going to be a lot easier to go through with silence than it is that blaring sound out of nowhere that you're not used to.
Right. Absolutely.
So the next one...
It's another one of your ideas.
I think most of these are my ideas, so I don't know if...
Well, I realize it is, and this one we'll talk about here.
Yeah.
It's... when we do search practices or even interior practices, if we haven't smoked out a room, either with theatrical smoke or with some sort of smoke that we can make, we put the press and seal.
It's the kitchen press and seal stuff for food.
For food, we put that over the outside of the mask.
And I think a lot of places out there do it. It's not uncommon. What I found uncommon is the last one I did at Les Luker, they had us put it inside of our masks, not outside.
And that's where I gotta ask, why inside?
So I think the reasoning for us was that it didn't accidentally fall off, and we couldn't brush it off. It was in there no matter what because we weren't taking off our masks. That is my assumption why inside, not outside. That way we didn't accidentally brush against it or take it off or whatnot, because that stuff comes off really easily.
Yeah, it depends on how good you got it. I've done a lot of trainings though with it on the outside, and it seems to work just fine.
Okay, so for us, he specifically said make sure put it on the inside of your mask. Oh, okay. And so we put it on the inside of the lens, and shoot, I couldn't see anything, obviously through that stuff, but yeah, you could see lightness and darkness, but that was about it.
Yeah, it was like really, really, really bad vision.
Oh, worse than that. I have bad vision, but. So yeah, it was that was one thing, the inside versus the outside. So it just doesn't come off as easy.
Okay. If you guys don't already do this is a great, easy way to practice searching or interior attack, because it does cloud your vision. Mm-hmm. And even though you may know a room, this gives you not blackout conditions. Yeah. But it gives you very cloudy vision, so that you can't just go walk around a room. It's going to make you rely more on your senses to navigate that room and find things. It's still not going to be accurate to an actual fire scenario or an actual fire call. Because I remember when I went through one of the ones Les Lukert, I could reach out my hand, and it was just funny how, like, my arm started to disappear. It's not going to look like that, so it's not going to be necessarily realistic. But it's still going to be clouded vision, right off the bat, where you can't see anything outside of your mask, and it's going to reinforce everything. So. Yeah, but at the same time, I've been in those fires where it does do that. You have? Oh yeah. Oh. You go into the house and you're just fine, and as soon as you hit something hot with that water, all of a sudden your mask just steams up. And you can wipe it off with your glove, but now your mask is all dirty and you still can't hardly see. And until the smoke clears or you get your mask cleared off, I mean, you're running around with little to no vision, and it usually ain't too bad if that is the case, though. But I mean, I've definitely been in that situation in a fire, so I don't really know if you remember. Yeah. The house. Wait, that was during the daytime. It was during the daytime. We had I believe it was a chimney fire, and it was in like a log cabin style house. I didn't realize it got that smoky in there. Well, it was so hot inside the house and so cold outside that when you went from inside to outside, you kept going back and forth, your mask would just instantly fog over. Oh, yeah, there was snow, wasn't there? Yep. So I forgot that there was. We ended up taking a piece of tin off the roof, and as soon as that vented, all that steam and smoke hit the mask, and then you're blind again for a little while until you could get it cleared up. So it happens a lot more, I've noticed, in the winter. Or if your face piece isn't put on right and you're exhaling into the mask, then it will fog over. Stuff like that. So, yeah, like I said, not super realistic, but conditions can make it happen, and you'll be trained for that then. Yeah. So. Hopefully it doesn't, but anywho. Yes, next one. I haven't done this one yet. Did you do this one? I did not do this one, but I got talked about it. This was another one that got talked about, and I haven't done it, and we need to do it. So I'm pulling a lot from a couple of years ago at Les Lukert with Valor Fire Training. Well, Valor, that's their big deal, is realistic training. Yes. And they have so many little tricks to make it more realistic. It is ridiculous, and I love it. Yeah. And I wish I got to train with them more. But so this was on Sunday morning for that Les Lukert conference, and Dave was taking me around since I wasn't there on Saturday with their hot class. I was actually taking classroom classes on Saturday, so I missed some of the talk of this. So he was telling me at one point, you put a garbage bag. So you have a firefighter with his air pack on, fully masked up, okay, and he has a tick. You put a garbage bag over the entirety of him and the tick, so he can still see into the tick. But the way the tick works, and I want to try this because I understand how it works, but it still screws with me how it can do this. It'll see through the garbage bag to the rest of the room, and it does not compute in my head, and I need to do it. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, a thermal camera works on thermal radiation, and trash bags hold very little to no thermal radiation. And so that's how that thermal camera can see through that trash bag. But it puts you in a blackout condition and relying on the thermal camera and really getting to know how to use it.
Yes. So, I will need to try that at some point. I still haven't 2 years later, and I just need to. But yeah, so that's just another way to make, the blackout conditions with that. So, you add that to a black room, to a no lights on room. Perfect.
Yep. And blackout conditions are fairly rare. Like, I don't hear many people going into them, but it seems like any of our fires that happen past sundown, they're blackout because you just don't have the natural light to them.
Yeah.
So if you're going in there, whether the smoke's black or the smoke is just a lazy white smoke, if it's dark outside, it's probably going to feel like blackout conditions. So that just really gets you comfortable with using that thermal. So, so search is what looks like what we're going into.
Yeah, this one specifically, I was thinking mass casualty kind of search. So this is like if you're looking for somebody out, if they were in a car accident, or let's say a bus, or okay, maybe not a bus, something happened where somebody was like thrown from a vehicle in the ditch or something. You can't find them or whatever. This was an idea I had. It's not, we haven't tried it, but I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't work either.
And so you can use this with a live person, and that'd be a lot easier, obviously, but you can do it with a dummy too. And just use heat packs around the dummy, or a couple points on the dummy, and that'll be your victim.
Yeah, so I didn't realize how many of these were kind of tying into the thermal camera. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So, yeah, car wreck, someone's thrown from the vehicle, adult, child, baby, whatever the case may be. If you do have a thermal camera, I would highly suggest getting out that thermal camera to look for that person.
Okay, so yeah, that's why this whole thing comes up. Sorry, I didn't add this to the beginning of that.
Nope, you're fine. So that thermal camera will actually see that body heat, and you won't have to do a grid search per se to go find this victim. If you pull out the thermal camera, you'll be able to find them much faster. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do this in training and kind of show how it works to other guys on your department, this is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Another thing, I think why I put mass casualty is because one time when we did the mass casualty in our own fire station, you could do the same thing there and put heat packs either with those Beanie Babies that we did or just with your dummies or whatever around the station.
Yeah.
So
if you're talking building collapse or whatever scenario may be.
Yeah, use a thermal camera.
Yeah,
pull out that thermal camera.
So, and then this sounds backwards, but it's not. The other side of that is you can use ice packs on a victim.
Yes. And again, haven't officially tried this out. I think it will work though.
I don't see why it wouldn't.
So, this is using ice packs for a victim for searching in a house fire. So if any of you guys, and if you're not up to this, we're going to get into it. When you actually do training on a tick, most of the time you're looking for the whitest thing in there when you're doing your trainings because that's going to be your hottest thing. So that's how you look for your victim, right? Well, when you're in a house fire, the victim's not going to be the hottest thing. The victim's probably going to be one of the colder things in there, right?
Yeah. So if your fire is 300 degrees, your victims, they're going to be pushing up higher just because of the natural radiant heat of the fire.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're still going to be cooler than the actual environment that they're in.
Yeah, so they might be more black or dark gray compared to the white that you're going to see of the actual heat of the fire. So, a way to be able to practice this before you get in a high heat situation is put ice packs either with a person or on your dummy or whatever to make them colder. So you're training yourself to see that darker color
instead of the
hotter color. Yeah. That way you don't get switched around when you're in a house fire and you're trying to look for that white for a person. It's not going to show up like that.
Right, yeah. You're still looking for that outline or that body-looking figure.
But it's going to be a different color.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it outside, it's going to be the hottest thing you're probably looking for.
Yeah.
If you're looking for it inside a house where the environment around that person is hotter than they are, it's going to be the opposite. You're looking for the colder person.
Yeah, and I know that's something that gets a lot of people tripped up, from what I've heard, just because they're so used to training on it without fire.
And this is a way you can train on it without fire, but still see what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, granted, if you're going to do it for several evolutions, you need a lot of ice packs and rotate them in and out, but, it's something. So,
yeah, absolutely. So,
again, it's not tried and true. We don't know it for sure, but I don't see why it wouldn't work.
I don't know why it wouldn't either. The concept is there, so.
All right, so what do we have for the next one, Chris?
Rescue Randys. Specifically in this case for extrication, for car wrecks. So, Rescue Randys are the dummies that you can buy to rescue. Mm-hmm. Hence the name Rescue Randy. You don't have to go out and buy a nice fancy rescue mannequin. Mm-mm. We had one here for the longest time, and I'm not quite sure why he got dismantled, but he did. You can actually make these rescue dummies out of fire hose. Especially
the old, crappy, retired fire hose that you don't use anymore.
Absolutely. And I think, if I remember right, I don't remember how many rolls it takes to do. It's not very many.
It's either 1 or 2.
Yeah, I was thinking 2 or 3, but they end up weighing maybe 100 pounds. So they're nothing heavy, but you could add more to them to increase the weight if you wanted to. But nonetheless, you can make them, and then you just put throwaway clothes on them and stuff like that.
I saw somewhere they put a set of old bunker gear on to keep it together better.
Right, yeah. I think we had our old red fire gear on ours, but when you're doing extrication, so if there's other ways you can do it, you can actually get people to
sit in there
and do that for you, but that takes a little more resources and time to organize, stuff like that. But this, in my opinion, is a safer option too, because if you have the resources, you can actually pin the dash on them. You're not going to hurt them.
Oh yeah, you can legitimately mold those body parts on the Rescue Randy or your hose dummy however you want. So you can really pinch them in there. You can really crush everything together. Do whatever you want to do to this without harming a person. And it is hyper realistic to the fact of this is what you might come up on, and this person could still be alive. Whereas we're not going to put a live person in that situation for these.
And there's might be a situation you want to do that you just physically can't do with a human being.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, put a hose dummy in there. Why not? It's easy. No, if they get crushed too much, they're not going to die, And then to run your scenario as if it were a live person in there.
Yeah. So, it gets you familiar with the skills. It gets you familiar with the actual extrication part, using the backboards, actually pulling that victim out of the vehicle.
Yeah, pull the victim out of the vehicle, put it on the backboard, do everything you would do.
Yeah, because you might find that you can only get 2 guys in a certain, between the backboard and the door of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Where, you pop the door, it opens up, you put the victim on the backboard, and you can't get enough guys around that backboard. Well, okay, now we need to pull the door all the way off so we have more room. Mm-hmm.
You'd find stuff out like that quick.
Yeah, or, say on a 4-door vehicle, you can get the people around the backboard because the doors open further or something like that, Mm-hmm. I mean, it teaches you a lot more on that extrication part of it. So.
Oh, yeah. And, I would be fully up for filling the car with hose dummies and having, have it like a legitimate crash happen. But you could have it where it was 3 vehicles involved, so maybe the front of the vehicle got smashed up and the side. So that's going to change what you're going to do, too, because you have, a body in the back, and 2 people in the front, so you have 2 parents and a kid. You could really escalate this however you wanted to.
Or that, where was it? In Texas or
that big
California
one?
Or something? Yeah, where was that? Yeah,
that was Texas.
One. Yeah. Was Texas? Where they had,
70-some cars?
No, not that one. Where they had 20 people in that.
25 people in an SUV.
25 people in an SUV.
That was in California. That just happened in the last day or 2.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. And I mean, you just never know what you're gonna get. So, even if you want to have fun with it and put 20 people in there, honestly, it could happen. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
It did. So, but yeah, it really reinforces the actual goal that you're going for, not just the skills.
Yeah.
So. Rescue Randys can be used in anything from extrication practice to house fires, search practice, tick practice, RIT training. There's so much.
Anything you have a victim for, whatever it be.
Yeah, there's so much you can use them for. It's ridiculous. So if you have old retired fire hose, Google it. If you can't find it,
we'll try to help.
Message us, and we'll try to find a link or something for you. So definitely doable, though. All right, what's the next one you got?
So the next one is using a car seat, and also a baby doll in car extrication practices. So I know we're dealing a little bit with car extrication here, but this one I thought was kind of cool. So a lot of times people don't think about the whole fact of, okay, there's a car seat in the car. Sometimes firefighters don't think of, hey, there might be a baby associated with this car, especially if whoever's driving is unconscious. So the baby could just be in the car. Okay, that's awesome. So how do you deal with a baby? How do you pick them up safely or whatever, especially if maybe the baby was injured or who knows what. So you have all that to deal with. Okay, what happens if the baby's not in the car seat anymore? So.
And this actually has happened. It wasn't a baby, but we had a wreck that we ended up extricating the driver, and he couldn't tell us if there's anyone with him or not. And we ended up searching ditches and stuff like that. And it turns out there wasn't. We finally got in contact with all the family members and stuff, and there wasn't anyone else with him, but we had no idea.
Yeah, you cannot assume that, especially if the driver is unconscious, you have no idea if there was actually another person in there or not. So you can't assume there was not another person. You have to confirm there was not another person, some way or another. So I have the baby thrown into the ditch kind of thing. Put a heat pack on the baby or something and put it in a ditch. And this is another thing where you're going to get your thermal camera out. If you don't have a thermal camera, you're going to do it the old-fashioned way, and you're going to check the land. Mm-hmm. It's going to suck, but you're going to do it.
Exactly.
So it's just another way to add realism to it. And one thing with a lot of these, don't tell your people you're going to do this for the practice.
Yeah.
You don't want them to be prepared for it. You want them to have to realize it. And maybe you have to, hey, there's a car seat. Where's the baby?
Yeah.
Maybe you have to nudge them a little bit to get them where you want them to go. But it's something you can put in there sometimes, not put in there other times, keep them on their feet for different practices, and that's really what you want. You want it organic. Every call is different, so you want to make every practice throw different things at them.
Yeah, and you want to keep their brains engaged and moving, and try to find those weird pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
All right, next one. This one's a big one for me, even though I know you came up with a list, but running scenarios from start to finish.
Yes. Especially if you don't like the way it's going, do not stop it.
Yeah, and I have a hard time with this one because I firmly believe in this rule, start to finish. Mm-hmm. But it is so hard for me to not stop it in the middle and point out something or fix something or do something like that. That is really hard for me to do because that's my way my brain works. But yeah, if you're going to run a scenario, we just got done talking about extrication, so we'll use that. If you're going to do an extrication scenario, run it all the way from pulling up on scene all the way to extricating that victim 15 foot out of the car on a backboard. And don't stop it in between there. Let the whole thing play out, and then keep notes, and then at the end of it, talk about it, and then if time allows, do it again.
Yeah.
Try to make things more efficient by running the whole thing. That way you can find out all the problems. You can find out, okay, well, we could have done this better. And maybe you'll get some input from the guys, too, that say, oh, you know what, we could have done this better. It would have worked out better if we'd done it this way, or we wouldn't have had to deal with this if we'd done this.
Another way I think of looking at this, or not way, but another scenario for it is if you're doing let's say a hose advancement training or search training, okay? They go in the front door, they make entry, they go through, they find whatever they want to find, they put out the fire. How many times do you guys, after they do that, they immediately take off their air packs? A lot, I'm assuming, because I know ours do. And I'm not talking real life fire situations. I'm talking about trainings where you go find the fake fire. You want them, once they get done hitting it or whatever it be, okay, even if they're done, if they say it's out or whatever, they need to find a way out of that house, whatever it may be, come out of that house before they take their air pack off. It's just those muscle memory things that are going to be easier to not have to remember in the moment.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're running it from start to finish. That way they're not getting in the habit of, as soon as they put the fire out inside the house, they're taking off their air packs.
Right, yeah. Not only that, as you were saying that, is it also teaches people to deal with problems that occur.
Yeah.
So if you pull a hose line, is that on there?
Yeah.
Oh. It is?
Well, they're throwing problems away.
This isn't intentional problems.
Okay.
This is natural problems. So if you pull a hose line, and let's say they don't pull it correctly, and it gets on a knot or caught on something, they're going to have to deal with that. You can't stop them and be like, okay, you pulled this wrong, let's put it back in and do it again. No, that's a problem that if you pull up to a house and somebody pulls a cross lay wrong or it gets snagged on something, they're going to have to find a way to deal with that.
Yeah.
And it keeps them thinking. And it keeps them hopefully trying to be a little more efficient at things, but it just teaches them how to overcome those problems that might come up too. Say something doesn't go 100% right.
This is a trial run for if they weren't in a practice. If they were in a practice, you could stop it immediately and whatever. This is we're going to say this is not a practice. You do not have to start over. You have to make do. Good luck. And they have no choice but to continue on, just like they would on a real scenario.
Right, absolutely. So, yeah, you're creating muscle memory so that they don't short things when they actually get to a fire. And you're creating the thinking aspect of it. If something does go wrong, this is how I fix it, or this is how I can fix it. And overall, you're just, hopefully everyone's getting input in there in the end and saying, okay, we could have done this better, or we should have done this instead.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so the next one we got... use an air bottle to pressurize the hose for inside hose advancement. And I will let you, Chris, go on with this one.
Of course you will.
Of course I will.
So, we do a lot of our hose advancement training actually inside of our station.
But
For different reasons. But our problem is we don't want to put water in that hose because we really don't want to clean up a flooded basement or something like that.
Yeah, if somebody accidentally opens it or whatever.
So we want to get the realism in of having a pressurized hose and how stiff it can get and how hard it is to maneuver around corners, things like that. So we have a cap on one side of the hose where the nozzle would be, and on the other side of the hose we actually have a air, like we can screw it on there, it's like a cap, but then we can fill that hose with air and then cap it off. So our hose actually stays full of air, and it's actually fairly realistic. The weight's not quite there, but the stiffness of the hose and how it reacts is there. And
we just use one of our air bottles that we use for our air packs for it.
Yep.
And open it up. So.
Yep. So that one is just, it's a better way if you, especially in the winter, if you're working inside and you don't have the area where you can get it wet without easily cleaning it up or whatever. This is a great way to be able to train that without getting everything soaking wet.
Yeah. And the reason I thought about using it for this specifically is because we charge our hose line with air for water rescue stuff. Yeah. We don't do a lot of water rescue. We're not quote unquote certified or anything for it, but we have a lake in the area. And so we practice with it a little bit, and it works great for that, especially if we have a victim or something out there in the water. We have a little setup with it, but we use it like that. So it's like, well, shoot, this pressurizes the hose. Let's use it for hose advancement.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. So it's a pretty good way of doing it. Setting up a house. So scenario-wise, if you're setting up to go into a residential house, make it feel like a house. Make it feel like someone lives there.
Make it feel like somebody lives there, especially somebody with kids. Make it feel like somebody with kids lives there, not the most clean couple out there or whatever. You know, someone with kids, someone messy.
Yeah, so if you set up a house in your meeting room and all you got is walls and a table and some chairs, that's not how most houses, at least that I go in to fight fires, that's not how clean they are.
Oh no. Like, I can even tell you in our house, and one of the guys made fun of me when I was setting up our little scenario last time. I was putting shoes by the table, like on the corners of the dining room table. And he's like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Because that's what we do at my house. Both you and I, we kick off our shoes at the dining room table on the corners. And I don't know why we do it, but we do."
Yeah.
And I wanted to make it realistic. I put, we had some old clothes or whatever down in the basement. So I put some clothes on our quote unquote makeshift bench because that's what we do. You know, like, toys are on the floor. Sometimes cushions or whatever. Where was your dog last? You know, was your kid messing with the curtains or something? You know, like, is there a phone, like, near, like, lower or something like that? Well, granted, no one uses corded phones anymore. But, like...
Yeah, don't have a clean floor. I mean,
Yeah.
Make it messy. Make it as realistic as you can.
Yeah,
You know,
think back to your house. Think back to other houses you've gone into. How did it look? Try to make it feel realistic. You want these firefighters to almost trip over stuff because we all know our houses are not perfectly clean.
Yeah. most of the houses that we go into to fight fires, being honest, at least around here, are not clean houses.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them have kids, and there's toys everywhere.
Yeah. So do that.
Yep.
It's not that hard to clean up the toys and put them back into a bin, take them back home, whatever. But yeah, just make it as realistic as possible. Throwing stuff all over.
Yeah, if you keep your clothes in a clothes basket at home, hopefully you don't, but I know a few people that do. You know, bring some clothes baskets in and throw some old fire gear or something in them, or
you're putting it next to the stairs because you mean to take it upstairs and you just don't get to it. You know, of course, or you get to it later that day, but maybe you have a fire in the middle of the day, and so this clothes basket's still on the stairs in the way.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's life.
Alrighty.
All right.
Next one near and dear to my heart.
Okay, so the next one is kind of a two-parter. It's a... Do you want to go over both parts or just one at a time?
Let's go over the first one first.
Okay, so the first one is running officers in the officer positions during your training scenarios.
And this is for training in general. This isn't necessarily scenario-based, but if you're going to train, have your firefighters do firefighter jobs and have your officers do officer jobs. Because that's what they're going to be doing when it's on scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it is a no-brainer. I hate to knock anyone that's doing this way, but to me, it's a no-brainer. If you're an officer, you're going to be doing officer things on scene. Like, that's how you operate. So when you train, why would you be doing firefighter stuff?
Yeah. That's
not your job. You should be doing in an officer role if you are an officer, and if you're a firefighter, you should be doing the work. Not saying officers don't do work, but go train at your role.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is in the department, you train at that position because that's what you're going to be doing.
And that doesn't mean the entire training you have to do your position. I mean, because if you are an officer and if you need training at the firefighter level still for something, you can go and do it for a firefighter level for a little bit, but then go back to your role.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're getting training at your role because that is your number one, even though you may end up on, scene of a whatever, but you only have 4 people on the truck and there are 2 officers. Well, you might not be taking the officer position if the other person is. So you're going to be taking that firefighter position.
Yeah.
So
I could see that.
So, you can still train at the other role. Just make sure at some point in the practice you're training at your officer role.
Yeah.
Because that is your first priority.
I think that's what drives me nuts, though, is either officers literally don't do anything and don't participate in training, or they are participating as almost a rookie firefighter.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not your guys' job. I know you know how to do this already. You should be doing this as officers.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to be telling guys to move? How are you going to tell them where to go? What do you want done? That's your guys' job.
Mm-hmm.
So
if they start trusting you, if you guys start trusting you and listening to you in the scenarios and the training, they're going to listen to you better on scene.
Absolutely.
So
and it gets that